You've heard the phrase, right? Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. People throw it around like it's a simple fix for life's biggest problems. But what happens when you don't have any boots? What happens when the very ground you're standing on vanishes overnight and you're left with nothing but the clothes on your back and your kids' terrified eyes looking for answers you just don't have? Her name is Sarah. Yesterday, her children, 10-year-old Tom and 6-year-old Lily, had beds. They had their toys, their books, the simple comfort of walls that knew their laughter. Today, they're looking in trash cans for something to eat. Yesterday, they had a life. Today, they're invisible. They're the ghosts people walk right past, pretending they don't see. This is their story. It starts the day their landlord forced them out with nowhere to go, and it's about how they fought like hell to be seen again. Before we dive in, drop a comment below with the city or country you're watching from, and make the comment section global. It wasn't some dramatic slow-motion failure. It was quiet, simple, and it destroyed them. The building was sold. The new owner wanted to flip the units, bring in a higher class of tenant. They got a notice, a piece of paper that felt more like a death sentence. It said they had to be out. The clock was ticking. They had to uproot their entire life, find a new home in a city where rent is skyrocketing and the waiting lists for affordable housing are a joke. She was a waitress. She made enough to pay the bills, but there was never anything left over. Coming up with a security deposit and first month's rent felt like trying to come up with $1 million. It was impossible. She begged. She showed them her perfect rental history. She told them about her kids, about the school right down the street. Their faces were polite, but their eyes were made of glass. "It's not personal," they said. "It's just business." But for them, for Tom and Lily, it was the end of everything. That last day was a blur of frantic packing and quiet tears. She tried so hard to be strong for the kids. She told them they were going on an adventure, a lie that tasted like ash in her mouth. Tom was old enough to get it. He didn't say a word, just grimly packed his backpack with his few things. Her sweet Lily just wanted to know if she could bring her big, fluffy unicorn. She packed the unicorn. When the landlord came for the keys that were proof of her failure, she couldn't even look at him. The click of the lock snapping shut behind them was the loudest sound she's ever heard. It was the sound of their past being locked away and their future being thrown to the wolves. That first night, they slept in her 20-year-old car. She found a well-lit corner of a supermarket parking lot, hoping nobody would bother them. She hung blankets over the windows for a little privacy. All night, she just listened to her children's restless breathing, a symphony of their fear. Eviction is a trauma, a sudden shock that leaves you feeling terrified and completely helpless. She felt it in her bones, a cold dread that wouldn't let her go. She didn't sleep a minute. She just watched the hours pass, her mind screaming one question over and over: what do I do now? The sun came up on a world that felt cold and hostile, and she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to her soul, that they were completely and utterly alone. The car was a shelter for a couple of nights, but it wasn't a home. On the third morning, security found them and told them to move along. That was the day they really became homeless. The day the streets became their home and garbage cans became their pantry. Their new life started before sunrise. As the city slowly came into view, they'd start their route through back alleys and service lanes. Her job was collecting cans, plastic bottles, anything she could trade for a few cents. Tom, her stoic little man, would help her, his face a serious mask as he sorted. Lily would just cling to her leg, her thumb in her mouth, her eyes wide with a confusion that broke her heart every single day. The work was humiliating. Her hands were always sore, cut up, stained with other people's garbage. But that was nothing compared to the shame. It was like a heavy cloak she couldn't take off. She learned to look down, to make herself small, to blend into the background noise. They were ghosts, haunting the edges of a world that threw them away. This life started to break her. The constant, grinding stress turned into a gnawing anxiety and a deep, crushing depression. It's a tragic fact that mothers who face eviction report rates of depression more than double those who have not. She was a living statistic. Some days, it was so heavy she could barely move. The feeling of being a failure was absolute. She was a mother who couldn't give her children the most basic thing, a roof over their heads. That stress, knowing she couldn't protect them from this nightmare, was a constant agony that frayed the bonds between them. Watching what it did to her children was the worst part. The trauma of losing their home was leaving visible scars. Children exposed to eviction are at a much higher risk for depression and anxiety. Tom, who used to be so chatty and full of energy, grew quiet and withdrawn. He never smiled. He was angry at the world, and she knew he was angry at her, even if he never said it. His silence was louder than any accusation. Lily started having nightmares. She'd wake up screaming, not knowing where she was. She clung to her mother constantly, terrified she would leave her. Losing a stable home wrecks a child's entire world, their sense of safety, their ability to just be a kid. Experts say the experience of eviction can cause lasting harm to a child's development and health, a fact that haunted her every single night. She was watching her children get hurt, and she was powerless to stop it. Their days swung between tiny moments of kindness and huge waves of despair. One afternoon, a woman leaving a bakery saw Lily staring at the cookies in the window. She came out and gave her a small bag, no questions asked. Sarah cried, not just for the food, but because for a second, someone saw them. Someone treated them like they were human. Another day, a shop owner screamed at them to get away from his dumpsters, calling them rats. Tom flinched like he'd been hit. The humiliation was so intense, she felt dizzy. They just walked away, her hand gripping his shoulder, the man's angry words chasing them down the alley. The hard truth is, their situation wasn't unique. Single mothers, especially women of color, are far more likely to face eviction and all the trauma that comes with it. The system isn't built to protect the vulnerable. Sometimes it feels like it's built to punish them for being poor. This isn't just one family's crisis. It's a public health crisis that destabilizes entire communities. Their turning point didn't come with a flash of lightning. It came on a cold, rainy evening. They were huddled under an awning, soaked and shivering. She'd only collected enough that day for a loaf of bread. Lily had a deep, rattling cough that terrified her. Tom was just staring into space, his face pale and empty. She looked at her beautiful children, and something inside her just snapped. She couldn't do it anymore. This could not be their life. This despair could not be their future. She felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in months. Defiance. She would not let this world break them. The next day, with that fire in her chest, she walked them to the public library. They went to get out of the cold, but she also remembered a community bulletin board there. Her hands were shaking as she scanned the flyers. And then she saw it. A small flyer with a simple drawing of a house with a heart in it. It said, "The Haven Community Outreach." A hand up, not a handout. We are here to help. She stared at it for a long time. The fear of asking for help, of admitting how completely she had failed, was huge. But the fear of what would happen if she didn't was bigger. She took a deep breath, tore the flyer from the board, and made a decision that changed everything. Walking through the doors of the Haven was one of the hardest things she'd ever done. Every part of her wanted to turn around and run back to the familiar shame of the streets. The building was just a small brick place on a quiet street, but inside it was warm. It smelled like coffee. A woman with kind eyes smiled at Sarah from the front desk. She didn't look at her with pity. She looked at her with respect. Her name was Maria. She was a social worker, and she just listened. She let Sarah tell her everything. And when she was done, her voice cracking, Maria slid a box of tissues across the desk and said, "You are safe now. We are going to help you." The Haven wasn't just a shelter. It was a support system. That first night, they slept in a clean, private room with 3 beds. It was the first time in months they'd been behind a door that locked. Sarah lay awake for hours, not from fear, but from the dizzying shock of relief. She could hear Lily breathing peacefully next to her, her unicorn tucked under her arm. For the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't have a nightmare. The journey back wasn't a sprint. It was a slow, steady climb. The change wasn't instant, but it was real. Her days weren't about surviving anymore. They were about rebuilding. The Haven connected her with a therapist. She started to unpack all the trauma. She learned to forgive herself, to understand that what happened to them wasn't a reflection of her worth as a mother. They had workshops on resumes and interview skills. They had a closet of donated professional clothes, and she saw herself in the mirror wearing something other than stained old clothes. She saw a flicker of the old her, the woman she thought she'd lost forever. She got a part-time job cleaning offices at night. The Haven had childcare, so the kids were safe while she worked. That first paycheck, it wasn't much, but it felt like $1 million. It was hers. It was proof that she was taking their lives back. Maria helped them get the kids enrolled in a new school. Seeing Tom walk into his classroom with his backpack, just looking like any other kid, was a victory so big it brought her to her knees. She worked, and she saved every single dollar. Each one was a brick in the foundation of their new life. The Haven helped her apply for subsidized housing, a process that's impossible to navigate on your own. They were on a waiting list, but now there was real hope. They weren't just floating anymore. They were on a path. The day it happened, she was at work. Her phone rang. It was Maria, her voice bursting with excitement. "Sarah," she said, "an apartment opened up. A 2-bedroom. It's yours if you want it." She dropped her cleaning rag and just sank to the floor, sobbing with a joy so pure it felt like it could break her. Signing the lease felt like a dream. The pen shook as she signed her name. The landlord, a kind man who worked with the housing program, handed her the keys. They felt cool and heavy in her hand. They were the keys to their future. She picked the kids up from school and didn't tell them where they were going. She knelt down in front of them on the sidewalk outside a small, clean apartment building. "I have a surprise," she said. Her voice choked with emotion. She held up the keys. Tom's eyes got wide. "Are those for us?" he whispered. Lily just looked from the keys to the door, a slow smile spreading across her face. She put the key in the lock. The click it made was the exact opposite of that other sound she remembered. This wasn't an ending. This was a beginning. She pushed the door open to an empty space filled with sunlight. It was small. It was simple. and it was the most beautiful place she had ever seen. The kids ran inside, their shouts echoing in the empty rooms, shouts of freedom. She just leaned against the doorframe and watched them, tears of pure gratitude running down her face. They were home. It's been 6 months. Their apartment isn't empty anymore. It's filled with thrift store furniture and her children's beautiful constant laughter. Tom is doing great in school. He smiles again. Lily doesn't have nightmares. Their life isn't perfect. The scars from that time are still there, a quiet reminder of how fragile everything is. That experience changed them forever, which is common for families who go through this. But they are not broken. They are resilient. She learned that dignity isn't something a landlord can take from you. It's something you carry inside and something you fight for. She looks at her children and sees a future full of possibility, not a past defined by pain. They survived. They fought. And they found their way back. Their story is about getting back up, but it's also a reminder that no one should have to go through this alone. They were lucky. They found the haven. But for every family that gets help, there are so many others who fall through the cracks. Knowing what they went through, do you think enough is being done to protect families from this kind of trauma? If their story moved you, please share it. The more people understand the human cost of homelessness, the louder we can call for change. Consider looking up the local organizations in your own community that are on the front lines, giving a hand up to families like Sarah's. Thank you for listening.